Okay, the recording has started.
Brilliant, thank you.
And the slideshow has started too. It's already.
Fantastic, brilliant. Let's hope that everything runs smoothly and we don't have any Wi-Fi crashes, etc., etc. Who knows? But anyway, well, so as I say, we are SeeAbility, and we are eye care champions for the London area for people with learning disabilities and autism. SeeAbility has eye care champions in both London and the Northwest, and we hope that eventually we will have eye care champions across the whole of England at least. So what are we covering this afternoon? So we'll cover the prevalence of sight problems amongst people with learning disabilities, provide some statistics, and explain how eye tests can be made available and accessible to people with learning disabilities and autism. We will also share a case study and individual stories and let you know about the tools we can offer you to make proper eye care a reality. Before we go on to this presentation a bit more in depth, I would like to introduce us all. So my name is Wayne Chapman. I am a SeeAbility London Eye Care Champion, and I'm presenting with two of my colleagues, and we all have different disabilities. So my disability is visual impairment. I have been totally blind since birth, more about that later. And my other two colleagues are Grace McGill, who also has a visual impairment and a mild learning disability, and Lance Campbell, who does not have a visual impairment, but who nonetheless has autism. So that way, we actually cover all angles very, very clearly. So next slide, please, Lance. So before we get onto eye care properly, stats, etc., I would like to tell you a bit about SeeAbility, just in case there might be some people who are not aware of us. So SeeAbility was founded in 1799 and became registered as the Royal School for the Blind, providing self-employment and accommodation for blind and partially sighted people. In 1994, we became SeeAbility, and today we campaign for better eye care for people with learning disabilities and autism, and provide specialist rehabilitation services and positive behaviour support. We also have residential and supported living services in the south of England, assist people to gain meaningful employment, and increase access to technology for people with learning disabilities and autism, many of whom may have slight sight loss. Teeth in Wayne. So very much as it was back in 1799, we don't underestimate people. We provide extraordinary support and help overcome huge barriers to achieve exciting new things every day. Some big, some small, all extraordinary. This is why we won the overall Charity of the Year award recently. And in fact, one of the things that helped us win that award was our work in special schools, testing the sight of children in these schools. And I'd like to share a couple of things that we've learned from those testing. Essentially, a third of children who we tested need glasses, and 44% of the children that we've tested so far had never had access to any eye care. And the average age that we saw these children was 11 years old. Isn't that shocking? So this is why eye care is so important for people with learning disabilities, autism. Certainly in the case of somebody with a learning disability, it is the most common secondary consideration after their learning disability. At this point now, I am going to hand over to Grace, who is going to be talking you through the next 3 slides. First of all, giving you some statistics, then moving on to some myth busting, and then finally speaking about eye care today in terms of COVID-19. Thank you, Grace. Over to you.
Okay. I'm Grace, and I'm going to tell you about slides 3, 4, and 5. Okay. There are many statistics. 6 in 10 adults with a learning disability will need glasses, and often the prescription is much higher. 1 in 10 adults have a 1 in 10 adults with a learning disability will have a sight problem. Children with learning disabilities are 28 times more likely to have a serious sight problem. And with the severity of the sight loss, the learning disability, will undoubtedly be the severity of the sight loss. Can I have the next slide, please?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, myth busting. A lot of optometrists think that someone who can't read doesn't deserve a sight test. Nobody is too disabled to have a sight test or wear glasses. There are all sorts of ways that you can have a sight test. Sometimes just the optician can shine a light in your eye to check if you need glasses. They do not need you to be able to speak to have this test. And also, it's not a good idea to assume that someone can see well. Assume they have a sight problem until confirmed otherwise. Can I have the next slide, please, Lance? Okay. Opticians and eye tests with COVID. Currently, opticians are open for routine sight tests. During the lockdown, they were open for urgent and emergency eye tests. When you go into the opticians, you will need to wear a mask and wash your hands. The only time you wouldn't need to wear a mask is if you're exempt. When the optician is seeing you, they will wear a mask and maybe a visor, but they will also possibly wear gloves and an apron depending on what they're doing. It's a good idea to ring up for an appointment, to ask them questions about your vision, and then they should be able to give you a call back same time each day to try and sort out an appointment, and then it will be the time to discuss any reasonable adjustments that the individual may need. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Grace. I'd also like to add on that one that really talking should be kept to a minimum, or if possible, completely avoided, because obviously you're in this optician's chair and sometimes, saliva can pass, whether you might want it to or not, and the virus can also be transmitted, because of passing of saliva when we speak. Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Grace. We're now going to move on to Lance, who's going to take you through the next 3 slides. First of all, the eye care journey and sight testing barriers. He's going to speak about 3 of them. And then he's going to move on to the eye care journey as a whole and the 4 stages within that journey and how important it is to keep moving along it. And then finally, he's going to speak about what can be done in terms of reasonable adjustments. So over to you, Lance.
Okay. So I'm now going to talk you through some of the barriers of having an eye test, because having an eye test is very important, but there are barriers as to why people don't want to have an eye test. So I'm going to talk about 3 of them because there are a lot of barriers. But firstly, people don't understand why an eye test is so important, because some people think that not having an eye test, having an eye test isn't that important, but actually it's very important, because using our eyes is just as important as using our ears or any parts of any parts of our senses. Eyes is just as important, and we use our eyes for everyday life, and so it is important to have an eye test every 2 years, more like once every 2 years, but more if your optometrist says so. So also communications, poor testing, communication difficulties during the eye test. So one of the barriers is that when you have an eye test, sometimes the optometrist might not know how to communicate with that person with learning disability, and that can be a barrier because sometimes the optometrist would struggle doing the eye test, and because they don't know how to communicate, it'll be difficult to perform that eye test with them. So it's always good when the support worker is there so that she can make the optometrist understand, or he or she can make the optometrist understand how best to communicate with a person with learning disabilities. And once they can find that best way, then the eye test is then the eye test can be done, because no one is too disabled to have an eye test. And then the last barrier I'd like to talk about is that people may be scared of an eye test. Now, some people can be scared of having an eye test, especially if it's their first time. And that is definitely common, because you wouldn't know what the test is going to be, how it's going to happen, and sometimes that can catch you off guard, and that is a common barrier as well. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is the journey for people with learning disabilities. So there are four stages of this journey. So the first one is to be aware of vision. So just be aware that people with learning disabilities are more likely than others to have sight problems. And so the support workers do need to recognize signs and symptoms of the sight problems and immediately take action to prevent the problem from going further. So the next stage is to have regular sight tests. Like I mentioned before, no one is too disabled to have a sight test. So people are supported and to prepare and take part in their sight tests. So it's always good to be well prepared before having the sight test, like getting used to the facilities, or knowing what's going to happen before it happens. Optometrists are delivering effective sight tests, eye care for people with learning disabilities. And then the results of the sight tests are recorded and shared with teachers and supporters. And that's very important, so that they are aware of what the result is and how to move forward with it. The third stage is to wear the right glasses. 6 in 10 people with learning disabilities need glasses and typically need help to get used to wearing them, especially if it's their first time wearing them as well. It is important to wear the right glasses and contact lenses for the right tasks, because sometimes you'll need glasses at specific moments, like to read, or to go out to certain places, or to eat, or to watch TV. But there are specific roles in where your glasses will become usable. Glasses and contact lenses need to be well maintained, and it is very important to make sure that the glasses fit well and are clean. And it's very important to make sure your glasses are clean, because wearing glasses that are either scratched or dirty could actually cause some damage. And the last stage is to get the right support. People who have eye conditions have these identified and explained, and have support to make the best use of their vision where possible. People who need eye surgery are supported to access surgery and aftercare. And people who have sight loss can access everyday information, specialist equipment, and support in environments suitable for someone with visual impairment. And the next slide I'm going to talk through is the reasonable adjustments for eye tests. So visit the optometrist practice or eye clinic before the appointment for familiarization, because sometimes sometimes if you've never been to, especially if you never had an eye test, it is important to make sure you're familiar with the facility so that you know where it is the eye test is going to happen, and you know a bit a way around, so that when you do come for your eye test, you're familiar with the facility. Fill out our telling the optometrist about me form. This gives essential information to optometrists on a person's eye health history, so they know what they have to work with. Mention if someone needs to use pictures rather than letters in their eye tests, so that again the optometrist can be prepared and make sure that they use the correct testing method for that person. Ask the optometrist to fill out an easy read report after the eye test, feedback from optometrist form. And also use SeeAbility's database to help find optometrists in your area. On our website, and we have a link called Find an Optometrist, and this takes you to our Find an Optometrist page on our SeeAbility website, where you can type in your address, and it will point you to the nearest optician, like near to your area, so that and then that way you can then use that to go and book an eye test and have an eye test done. And yeah, and now I'm going to pass on to Grace to talk to you about the next couple of slides.
Okay. The Loxy path. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's just like echo pace.
Okay.
It's okay. Just carry on. It'll go.
The Loxy pathway. I just unmuted myself again. So muted and unmuted, so it seems to be all right now. Okay. Everybody is entitled to a standard sight test. The Loxy pathway, for those of you who don't know, stands for Local Optical Committee Support Unit. Some areas have a specialist pathway for people with learning disabilities called the Loxy pathway. This isn't available in every area yet, but hopefully it will be a national spread. The service ensures that people who need longer sight tests or multiple appointments to complete the sight test, easy read reporting forms, and the opticians have extra training in a community service. The Loxy pathway aim is to avoid people having to go to the hospital when they don't need to. Sutton, Barkingham and Dagenham and Bexley, Greater Manchester, Cheshire and Merseyside and Durham are currently the areas where the Loxy pathway is. However, we are making progress to try and change that. The aim is to get national coverage, and here is a website link of the Loxy pathway information, which is on our website. Can I please have the next slide, please, Lance? Okay, SeeAbility have a special school eye care service. We go into special school optometrists and dispensing opticians go into special schools to test the sight of people, children and young people who would find it difficult to go to a community or hospital-based setting because of their additional needs. The advantage of this is that it involves eye tests and providing glasses in a much more familiar environment to them. Initially, this started in 8 special schools in London and a couple in the northwest, but NHS England have now come forward and they're rolling the service out nationally to reach up to 120,000 children. This
That's
is
right.
a very worthwhile service, and it is always a pleasure to see some individuals smile on their face when they can see.
Absolutely, because we've all been there, haven't we, Grace, and seen the service in action, and it
Yeah.
really is. It's a really amazing thing, and I mean, and also we are the first organisation anywhere in the world to actually do any research or indeed test the eyes of children in this client group. And
Yeah.
our findings, as Grace explained, have really proved the NHS that actually it is worth rolling this out, because it can avoid so many children
Yeah.
becoming totally blind, maybe even in some cases, unavoidably.
Yeah.
It's now, sorry, Grace, carry on.
And it was mainly led by Lisa Donaldson from SeeAbility. And I'm pleased to announce that she won a Passionate Award for the Internal SeeAbility Excellence Awards. And that was all mostly down to the special school eye care service that she helped roll out.
Absolutely, and that also helped us win our Charity of the Year recently as well. So thank you, Grace. This now leads me on very nicely to what I call the case study part of the presentation. So we should be on the next slide now, Lance, are we?
Yeah.
Right, perfect. So essentially, I am now going to tell you about someone who was one of the first children we ever tested in special schools, who really is a star as far as we're concerned in SeeAbility quarters. Okay, meet Nathaniel. He's deaf, has limited verbal communication, and was in a challenging behaviour class in a special school. We gave him his first eye test ever. He was about 13, 14 when this happened. No one knew his vision was so poor that he could only see a few centimetres in front of his face, with a prescription of glasses of -18. So let's get the scenario here. He's deaf. He has no verbal communication. No one knew that he had a sight problem, essentially. If that was any of you and you couldn't communicate and you couldn't be communicated with, I wonder how you'd behave. Would your behaviour be possibly called challenging? I think so. But obviously, how else could he express himself? But we went in there, tested his eyes, and straight away knew what the problem was. He has glasses. He now loves his glasses and has 20/20 vision with them. The transformation is enormous. Without glasses, his level of vision would make him eligible to register as severely sight impaired or blind. So again, without our input, his life could have taken a very different path, and he could have been on the register completely unnecessarily. And remember that he's deaf and he has limited, if any, verbal communication. We all have the right to communicate. We all want to be heard, and at the same time, we all want to be communicated with. Every human being on this earth has the right to communicate. Every creature on this earth communicates. The animals communicate, the birds communicate. This poor chap was denied every possible chance. So therefore, his sight problem, as you'll discover, which was the passport to change, if you like, wasn't immediately obvious. But now he has the right glasses, he is happier and more independent. He learned sign language. So again, he was deaf. This was the way he could speak to people, could engage with people. So he learned sign language and how to ride his bike for the first time. So again, able to go out and about independently. Could see, he had his glasses. He also did better at school and has since attended college According to his previous head teacher, Kay Charles, who said at the time of Nathaniel's eye test, when Nathaniel couldn't see properly, he became distracted, which led to challenging behaviour. Now his confidence is growing and he feels part of the class. And absolutely, why shouldn't he? And God bless him. So the next slide, I don't know if it's on the screen, but the next slide now basically shows Nathaniel's vision without his glasses on the left-hand side of the screen, and on the right-hand side of the screen, it shows Nathaniel's vision with his glasses. So 20/20 vision. So just think, if we hadn't gone in there, just think what could have happened to him. It doesn't bear thinking about, does it really? I'll just give you a few seconds to think about that. So that's quite a lot to take in. Okay. We now move on to the part of the presentation where we're each going to share our own stories to bring it a bit more to life. So first of all, Grace is now going to tell you her eye care story.
Okay. Okey-dokey. I had bilateral congenital cataracts, which were removed at when I was 11 months old at Great Ormond Street Hospital. In my late teens, early 20s, I started getting inflamed eyes because they were very dry. I had episcleritis, which is a serious inflammation of the outer layer of the eye, and then scleritis, which is a very serious inflammation and frequent conjunctivitis. The picture of the eye there is similar to what used to happen to my eye. When I was 23 years old, I was diagnosed with glaucoma, had lots of headaches, saw flashing lights, my eyesight got worse, and at times my vision blacked out completely. I cried a lot, lost a lot of confidence, needed help going out, living my life, and suffered with depression as no one took me seriously. Can I have the next slide, please, Lance?
Yep.
Okay. I used to have Charles Bonnet syndrome, which causes visual hallucinations. This happened because my sight got worse. I used to see snakes and spiders running across my arms, on the floor and on the walls, which was terrifying. The picture on here is an example of what you may be able to see with Charles Bonnet syndrome. However, it can be anything. I didn't tell anyone about this for over a year and became anxious and angry. Eventually, my GP helped me. Mental health issues were ruled out, and I was finally diagnosed with Charles Bonnet syndrome. However, I was wrongly prescribed antipsychotic medication because the mental health team assessed me as having psychosis. My Charles Bonnet syndrome vanished quite suddenly when I was in intensive care with unrelated health problems. When I came round from my induced coma, I didn't have my Charles Bonnet syndrome anymore. I feel 100 times better now that I don't have Charles Bonnet syndrome. I have a job and live as independently as I can and have a full life.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Grace. Right, so it's my turn now to say a few words to you about myself. Okay, so as a child born in the late 1960s, I have been totally blind since birth, as mum was in contact with rubella. That was a very, very common thing then, but thank the Lord, many girls these days, if they have any sense, have the rubella injection. So my eye condition, certainly in the Western world, is very much a rarity. Essentially, because of the rubella, my optic nerve and my retina just don't connect properly. It's a bit like a telephone wire not quite reaching a telephone socket. That's about the best way to describe it, really. So I've encountered many barriers in my life due to my blindness, mainly due to people's ignorance, thinking, oh, well, how can a blind person do this? How can a blind person get around by themselves, when a young child, for example? How will I ever cope? Life? How will I ever get a job? how will I ever do the same things that other people can do who are sighted? I've done many of those things, which I'll come on to in a little while. People often think that a blind person cannot fully function due to lack of access to information. This is really crucial. I mean, thank the Lord for technology these days. I use speech on my iPhone and on my PC, and also I'm using a Braille note taker here to do my presentation. I have a Braille display in front of my PC. The information gap is certainly greatly decreased. So, whilst I am a proficient Brailleist, someone who uses Braille, it's often up to me to ensure I am able to access information in the correct format. By and large, I get a lot of information by email, but sometimes it's just nice to read information on paper in Braille. So sometimes I do request it if I need to. For example, I have my bank statements in Braille, my water bills in Braille, my accounts tax bills in Braille, and just general things like that, really. So I use a computer with speech and Braille technology and can type and work as fast as anyone sighted, which is really true, especially because I'm Braille, for example, if anyone doesn't know, you have grade 1 Braille, which is everything written out letter by letter, and grade 2 Braille, which is contracted using common combinations of letters in every language that Braille is used in. So if I'm using my Braille display here in front of my PC, I'll just hold it up for a second. I don't know if you can see that. That's my Braille display. It has a keyboard with the 6 dots of Braille, a space bar, an enter key, and a backspace key. If I'm using that to type, I can be as fast as anyone sighted, maybe even faster, actually. I often have to rely on sighted assistants to help me with issues such as grocery shopping. So I go to a local Tesco's on a regular basis. The staff know me there really well. They know my name. They often know what I like, and they're always happy to guide me around the store to get exactly what I need. And that also applied during COVID-19, some lockdowns. Thanks be to God. So that was good. I also might need assistance, for example, in identifying currency when traveling. 2 years ago, I went to Uzbekistan, and the Uzbek sum is the same size, no matter what note you're actually getting out your wallet. So I had to be really careful and make sure that people helped me put all my notes together, or my 50 som together, or my 100 som together, so that I knew exactly what I was handing over most of the time. I didn't get ripped off anyway. I have friends with guide dogs, and on occasions, I have witnessed them being refused access to restaurants and taxis because of their dogs, which has been illegal since 1999. I could tell you so many stories about that kind of thing. And I mean, regrettably, it's so sad to think that people working in restaurants sometimes are just not given the proper training, and just seem to think that the dog shouldn't be there as a pet dog, and therefore try and have an argument with you. And I know there are people on this call that have had similar situations. Despite all the challenges I have faced throughout my life, I have never let my visual impairment stop me from trying and achieving what I wanted to do. It's true, I have led a full life. I've had a good education, up to A-level standard. I could have gone to university, I chose not to. I've worked most of my life. I speak 4 languages. I've traveled extensively. I've lived in France. And I sing in my local church choir using Braille when possible, when we're back together again in normal times, whatever they may be. I came to SeeAbility, in fact, because I worked for many years as an information officer on the RNIB helpline, providing advice and support to people with sight problems. And also in my late teens up until my early 30s, I used to go to Lourdes on an annual pilgrimage for disabled children, Lourdes in southwest France. I used to go as their interpreter and musician. Many of the kids that we took with us had either autism, or a learning disability. So therefore, I had that hands-on experience. That's me in essence. But before I hand over to Lance to tell you his story, I'd like to give you a few of my top tips. Slide up, please, Lance. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So my top tips. First of all, don't be afraid of using words such as look, watch, or see. These words form part of everyday language, and a blind person finds it extremely irritating and patronizing if spoken to differently. If you are talking to a blind or visually impaired person at a gathering or just a meal, whatever, don't just walk away without saying you are leaving them, as this is extremely rude, disrespectful, and embarrassing. I can't tell you how often this has happened, and I've been talking to myself.
I'm not sure if Wayne has frozen on us just there.
Do you want me to take over, Steve?
Hey, can you see this slide okay, Grace?
Yeah.
Yeah, please do, please do.
Okay. It's not a good idea to walk away from people, especially if they've got a severe visual impairment or no vision, because they won't know where you've gone. And it can be quite rude, disrespectful, or embarrassing to a individual. Wayne has had that a lot of times in his life, and it hasn't always been very nice, especially as he's realised he's been talking to a brick wall. It's always a good idea to ask if a visually impaired person needs support. Don't just assume. And it's also a good idea to follow the NHS accessible information standards and ensure that the visually impaired person has information in the correct format for them. So many times people I know have had to tell medical professionals that they need print, standard print in braille, audio, or text. I know someone who's completely blind, and they sent her a hospital letter in large print.
Grace, can I ask for yourself, what format do you like to receive information in?
I like to receive my information in large print, email, or text.
And would you say that's important to you?
It is very important to me because I don't like having things read to me.
Yeah.
I don't think I should have to have things read to me.
Not when you've got the ability to read it for yourself.
No.
Lovely. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide.
Okay.
Here you go, Lance. Away you go.
Okay, so just a bit about my eye care story. So, as mentioned before, I do not have a visual impairment. However, I do have autism and need support with some parts of my life. So, as an eye care champion, I raise awareness of eye care issues for people with learning disabilities and autism. And before I joined SeeAbility, I didn't realize a sight test was so important. As I did have good vision, I was one of those people that didn't think having an eye test was that important. I didn't think this was something I needed to do. And it's something my family and I just never got around to doing. And then soon after joining SeeAbility, I thought, as I am joining, as I am raising awareness for eye care, yeah, I couldn't say to people, it's important to get an eye test, and I haven't had an eye test. So soon after joining SeeAbility, I went to have my eyes tested for the first time ever. Fortunately, there was no problems found with my vision. And now I will go every 2 years, as everyone should, or more often if I'm advised to. Before I came to SeeAbility, I was on an internship called Project Search, where I was it was in Charing Cross Hospital, where I was doing, which is an organisation to help young people aged 16 to 25 with learning disabilities and autism to help find a job. And through there, I was doing voluntary work with the audiology department, and I was doing hearing check. I was observing hearing checks and helping out with repairs for hearing aids and doing admin work as well. And then I did a presentation at College of West London Alliance College in Hammersmith to promote Project Search. And from there is how I found my way onto SeeAbility. And I've been working with SeeAbility for over 2 years, and this is my first paid job. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about the SeeAbility resources. So our eye care resources are all on our website, and these would include our eye care forms, which can record information about people with learning disabilities prior to the sight test, and feedback forms that are filled in by the optometrist after an eye test. And this is on our website. And then there's easy read fact sheets on supporting people to wear glasses. So it will tell you in an easy way how to support people wearing the glasses, which is very useful and helpful. And easy read fact sheets on eye care conditions and treatments. There is also a screen use easy read fact sheet, which would explain about how to protect your eyes from screens. And these are all on our website. And now I'm going to pass on to Grace to talk about SeeAbility and how we can help and use our services.
Okay, thank you, Lance. Right. Our champions, eye care champions in both London and the North West, are ready and willing to support you. Lance, Wayne and I work in London, and Joanne, who is attending today, works in the North West with 3 other colleagues. What we do is we can signpost you to eye care services, and we can signpost you to resources, which are all on our website. We can do presentations to help you understand the importance of eye care, and we all have lived experience. We can offer advice and support to individuals. You could also work with our eye care champions in the North West and London. We're just very happy to help you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Grace. Brilliant. Thank you. I'm back. Sorry, I was my Wi-Fi went down. I live near the underground station, so this does sometimes happen. But thank you for stepping in for me, Grace, as well. Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. Right. I mean, yes, and also just to say on that point, I mean, whilst we have eye care champions right now in London and the North West, we are always willing to offer and attend sessions online to anyone nationally, if the need arises. So that's really, really good. But our aim essentially is to have eye care champions right across England eventually. So that's really good. Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed this session this afternoon, and certainly Lance and Grace and I have enjoyed presenting to you. Now is your moment. If you're feeling brave enough and wish to unmute yourselves, raise your hands and ask any questions. Maggie.
Oh, hi everyone, and thank you so much for an absolutely fantastic presentation. It was wonderful, particularly to hear your own individual stories and the story about Nathaniel. I think it was I was quite shocked to see that slide that showed the, him with glasses and before having the glasses. But what I wanted to ask was really maybe to Grace was about the Charles-Bonnet syndrome, and I just wondered, do you think, is there good awareness amongst healthcare professionals around that syndrome?
I would say no, because Charles-Bonnet syndrome is quite easy to misdiagnose with psychosis.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah.
And I was put on antipsychotics, which caused more harm than good, and they didn't help the Charles-Bonnet syndrome anyway, because Charles-Bonnet syndrome doesn't respond to medications.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
quite an unknown condition, but it could do with being more known about.
Yeah, I think that's quite right, Grace. And your experiences when you've spoken about them have been very sort of shocking, really. Sadly, yeah, as Grace says, not enough people know about Charles-Bonnet syndrome, so people seeing things that aren't there, and that means the person themselves, they doubt themselves, and they wonder what's going on, and that means it can be confusing for other people as well if the person is reacting in certain ways. And as Grace says, it's hard to diagnose. And of course, we want all medical professionals to understand about Charles-Bonnet syndrome. So it's something that they're thinking about, and it's on their mind when they're talking to people with sight loss. But Grace's experience was not good, and we wouldn't want that to happen to other people.
But I'm actually very glad I don't have it anymore,
Absolutely.
because it really wasn't a nice thing to have.
No. I mean, when I worked at RNIB on the helpline, I heard some horror stories. It's just awful.
Thank you, Grace.
Anybody else for a question who wishes to raise their hand?
So Jay has asked a question in the chat, which I can read out.
Yeah, go for it, see.
Yep, so Jay's asked, where does one get help with Charles-Bonnet syndrome? And there is an organisation
Called Esme's Umbrella.
Yeah, I'll type that into the chat as well.
Wait a minute.
Oh, we got that, Grace. So Esme's Umbrella was set up particularly for people with Charles-Bonnet syndrome to raise awareness, to help people to understand and to learn about the condition, and to also, importantly, to provide some coping strategies to help people, if they're in that situation, to manage and to get through it. They do have a website, and so Grace will type in that into the chat so that we've got that logged in that part of the presentation.
Indeed.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you. Any more? Verbally or in the chat?
Wayne, I think 2 people have got the hand up.
Yeah. I think Sarah Actor put her hand up first.
Okay, Sarah, what's your question? Hello.
Oh, hi. First of all, thank you for a really informative presentation. That's been great today. I learned a lot. I'm actually a QTVI and my caseload is primarily children with PMLD in special schools and preschool children as well, actually, who are at home. So what I would like to ask is, many of my children, well, no, some of the children on my caseload are diagnosed with CVI, cerebral vision impairment, which is my area of particular interest.
Yeah.
And also many of the children display visual behaviours of CVI. So I'm just wondering when the optometrists go into schools, how would they refer on? Are they just going to be looking at ocular impairments, or are they going to be, will they have an awareness of looking for CVI?
I think they are aware of certain CVI conditions, obviously, but I think pretty much they're looking for ocular impairments. But I mean, certainly we would always advise being referred to a neurologist, really, because I mean, because obviously it is quite different when it's cerebral visual impairment, really. Often people with autism particularly may have CVI, and that may be simply because of so much activity in the brain and the brain just trying to process it all.
Just to add into Wayne's answer there, so it is definitely, I can reassure, something that the optometrists are looking out for and are aware of. Obviously, we know that it's a difficult thing to diagnose, so the optometrist wouldn't go so far as to make a bold diagnosis, but they would be looking for signs that suggest the existence of CVI, and then thinking about those next steps, those next referral steps. Because it's so common amongst children who go to special schools, it is something that we see a lot of, and we do have it high on our agenda. So it is something that the Optoms look out for. And if you want to have a chat outside of the meeting and just to talk more about that, we're very happy to do that.
Definitely.
That's great, thank you.
If you please put your email in the chat, then Sarah, we can get in contact with you.
I will do. Thank you very much.
Thank
You're
you.
more than welcome. Right, who else had their hand up?
Ravini Makawana.
Okay, hi there, Bhavini.
Hi Wayne, hi Grace, hi Lance. I just want to say what a fantastic presentation, and it was really interesting hearing each of your personal stories. I think they were really nicely delivered. My point was just around, I think the question around CBS, Charles Bonnet syndrome. If there is anybody on the call that wants to find out more, perhaps they think they've got it or just wants to talk to others who may have it. I work for London Vision as their engagement manager every 2 weeks on a Thursday. So the next one will be next Thursday. We have a forum where people who think they may have Charles Bonnet wants to talk to others to understand it more. There is a forum that happens every 2 weeks, and because it's online, you don't have to be based in London. So I just wanted to share that if anyone wants to, just attend or perhaps find out more.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bhavini. Thank you. Great. Sure. Thank you. Any more hands raised?
Nope. That's about it.
Okay. Is there anything in the chat worth asking?
Not in terms of questions. Lots of people have asked just to confirm that we can send the recording round, so I've been replying to those and saying that we will certainly do that.
Brilliant.
So yeah, people have been putting their email addresses and so on, but no further questions.
Someone just put their hand up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Usher,
Hello.
Usher Sadia. Yeah.
Hello. Please, could you say your question?
Okay, sorry. I work for a charity called One to One Enfield. We work with adults with learning disability and those on the autistic spectrum. I found your presentation today really good. Thank you very much for sharing it. It was very informative, and I'd love to invite you to one of our health talk sessions. And we do health talks on different subjects once a month. So what I'll do is I'll get in touch with Wayne or yourselves and maybe book a time. Maybe a few of you could come along. I think it would really help some of our members. They're all different age groups from 18 years plus and have different health conditions. So I think, as you said before, Lance, eye tests can show up other medical conditions as well. So that's really important to know. So thank you very much.
You're more than welcome, and we'd love to receive that invite. We'll certainly do our utmost to attend.
Okay, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Any more questions?
Just in the chat, just more requests for the presentation. So I'm taking notes of email addresses.
Oh, brilliant! Thanks, Steve. Good.
If anybody needs to follow up with us, then we're very happy to be in touch separately by email as well. So yeah, we're very happy to continue the conversation afterwards.
And the good thing about a Microsoft Teams meeting is that the chat will remain open. So, you can always put things in there afterwards once we're finished. We'll pick them up.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, if no one has any more questions, I guess we should draw this to a close now then. And thank you once again, one and all, for popping along this afternoon. Lovely feedback that we're getting. Lovely to hear it. Thank you so much. Sorry my internet crashed, but thank you, Grace, for stepping in. Thank you, Steve, for doing all the behind the scenes stuff to help us go ahead this afternoon smoothly. And also thank you to you, Maggie, who actually first of all thought of this idea. And then initially it was only going to be sort of like for London teams, and it got tweeted and retweeted and retweeted. And here we are with a fantastic audience this afternoon from different parts of the country. And it just proves the power of the grapevine, the power of social media, the power of word of mouth. So thank you once again. Enjoy the rest of your day and take care. And maybe we'll cross paths again. Thank you. Goodbye to you all for now then.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.